Great, everyone. Thank you so much for your participation, and I'm looking forward it in the coming of in the future of the session. So let's begin, and I would love to introduce myself as well. So hi, everyone. My name is Ofir Kimberg, and I'm Trifacta Product Manager in aQurate. aQurate are Trifacta's partners and representative in Israel. That means that my role is conducting pre-sales and post-sale activities with the Israeli customers, of course, alongside the amazing Trifacta team at EMEA. Just like you guys, I have done my Wrangler, Knight, and Sensei certifications in the Trifacta Academy, and I am super honored to receive the legend of February's legend. And I'm sure we're going to have an amazing session together. So let me share my screen and we will begin. So I believe that one of the biggest challenges every modern company is facing is how do we adapt to changes? This is a very fast-paced, changing world, and we don't always know what tomorrow holds. And it doesn't have to be something as drastic as a worldwide pandemic like COVID-19. The change can be smaller things like new data we need to incorporate, or new formats, or even changing in business requirements. We know that everything is consistently changing and we need to adapt to it. We see that everyone is trying to figure out how to do it effectively. We see it everywhere, from the Agile Manifesto in coding to the sampling mechanism in Trifacta. So we know that we need to prepare for the unexpected, for the new changes that are going to come in the future. But that is much more easily said than done, because we don't always know how to efficiently plan for those changes. This is why the goal of this session is to introduce you a very powerful feature Trifacta have incorporated in the last year and see together how can we leverage it to bring more flexibility to our work, and in return allow us to deal with changes much more efficiently, and that results in a faster time to market. So let's go over this session agenda. First of all, we will go over the 3 types of parameters we have in Trifacta: dataset, flow, and output. Then we will see some example for customer use cases that have leveraged this function to their advantage. And also I'll be sharing some of my personal experience. Then we will move on to the main event of this session, which is the training itself. We will take a deep dive specifically in dataset and in flow parameters. And as I said in the intro, for all of you newcomers, the dataset parameters will need some basic knowledge of SQL. So if you're not feeling very comfortable in it, please write me in the chat and I will change the training accordingly. With that said, let's begin. So the first data set we're going to cover is the parameter data set. And actually we have 2 types because we can create different kinds of data sets. The first one is when we create a data set from a file in a file system, if it's HDFS or S3 and so on. So I hope all of you are familiar with this window where we are in the library window and we are creating a new data set. Notice in the right side of our screen where we have the option of create a new dataset parameter. When we click this, a new opens up where we can create our parameters. We have 3 types of parameters: date, variable, and joker parameters. let me just say that the date is reflected to the run jobs date, and the joker can mean anything in this path level. We can create a parameter in the file name or in the path of the file. Next up, we can create a dataset parameter when we're working with tables by creating parameter in the SQL itself. Notice again in the upper right corner of the window, we can create a new dataset with SQL. This new window opens up where we can create our query and add our parameters. This time we only have two types, the date and variable. We don't have the joker in this option. When we add a parameterized dataset to our flow, when we click on the dataset icon and the details window opens up to our right, we're able to view and edit as seen here when we click on the edit. We can see our query and our parameters as well, and we can edit them in this section. Moving on to our next parameters, which are flow parameters. So in the flow window in the upper corner, we're able to select the manage parameters. When we click this option, a new window opens up, and this is a place where we manage our existing parameters as well as creating new ones. As you see here marked, we can add a new parameter, we can name it and give a default value. Especially here, I will mention that it's super important to give indicative name to our parameters, and especially in flow parameters where we actually can't re-edit the parameter's name. So as you see here, we give an indicative name and a default value. After we created our parameters, we can call on it when we're creating our recipe steps. And whatever value it holds, for this reason, our default value, this is how it will react in our recipe steps. As seen here, we're doing an if match, then replace if the discount column is equal to our max parameter, then replace it with match, otherwise leave that column value as we've seen here marked in yellow. It depends on which version do you have of Trifacta. In newer versions, we're able there's a new icon in our recipe window where we can actually see and edit and create new parameters in the recipe window, and we don't need to every time go back to the flow window to do so. When we run our project, we're able to see all the parameters we have created in this project, the dataset parameters as well as the flow parameters, and we see it in the default value we have created, and this is a place where we can alter and change it to our changing needs. The last parameter we are going to see today is the output parameter, which we create when we are setting the destination for our run project. So as you see here, we have the parameterized destination, where we can give, again, two types of parameters, and the date, which is of the date of when we ran this job, or a variable. So before we continue, let's summarize it really quick. We have three types of parameters. The first one is dataset. The dataset parameter allows us to give a specific parameter to the file path or file name, or in the SQL query we have created when creating a dataset. We can use it mainly for filtering our data, and we're going to cover it further in the next slides. The next type of parameter we have is flow parameter, where we actually create this flexible value where we can call on it in different recipe steps. And what it does is give us a lot of flexibility in the recipe steps and in calculation. And we'll even see some advanced implementations of it, of actually creating like a menu for the user to decide which course of action would he or she would like to do or happen in our execution. And lastly, we have the output parameter, where we are able to give a dynamic name for our output. Again, it helps us easily to rename our output. It's giving that date in which it ran, or for debugging purposes. Those are the three types. Let's move on to why it's useful and how can you benefit from this. And we will do it by examining some use cases. The first parameter we're going to see how can we benefit from it is actually the data set. And we're going to look at it from an execution point of view. Please, if you joined us, make sure that you are on mute. Thank you very much, everyone. So as I said, we all know the logic steps when creating a project, where we discover, we restructure, clean, enrich our data, but we can also set the steps of our projects in a more technical point of view, and I will explain what I mean. In every step of the way in our project, we would like to make sure we are working on the minimum amount of data possible that is still relevant to our project. And I guess all of you know that when we run a job, the first step that is happening is ingesting our data to our execution environment. That means that every column or rows that are not relevant to our specific run, to our specific project, we would like to filter out before our project begins, before our recipe begins, because every recipe step we do is after this ingestion process. So we are able to filter out unneeded data actually when we're creating a data set before the ingestion process takes place. And this allows us to get better performances and to save some of our resources that we spent in this execution. The other thing that is helpful in dataset parameters is when we're talking about usage. And I would like to talk about one of my customers, that they are credit risk model builders. So I hope a lot of you can resonate with their work process. When they're creating their logic, their recipes, their project, they're going to work on a sample data. They don't want to work on their entirety of data. And when they're happy with their result, they will need to execute the entire logic on the entirety of their data. Because when they're working on statistical panels for models, you need to take a lot of time back, a year, 2, 3, or even 5 years back. So it's a very big run, and you run it only once. You want the historical of your data, and from this point, you can schedule your job to run only with the new delta that is created between your schedules. And a lot of times we think that this is the point our project ends. We have created our logic, we have ran the first execution on the entirety of our data, and now we can work only with deltas. So of course we know that change is coming and unavoidable, and in some cases, we will need to do some reruns for specific dates because the job failed or the data have been ingested not in the date that was expected, or we need to do a change in logic, and that actually requires us to reset our panel and rerun a new historical run on the new logic we have produced. And how do we cope with that? Well, we have a few options. First of all, the first approach is to say, let's re-edit our one data set that we have used each time to our need. So the first one we will run on everything on our historical data. And then in the second time, we will re-edit our data set so it will work only on deltas. And if the need will arise that we need to create a different run, then we will re-edit the dataset to whatever change we need. A different approach might be we will create a different dataset for each need. And we will change the input of our flow as needed to the different dataset. I think you can all understand why both of those approaches are problematic, because they take, first of all, manual work, which we always want to reduce as much as possible, and they're very prone for human mistakes. We have another approach, and I think this could be the desired one. We can create a parameterized data set that will be enough flexible that it will suit us no matter our need. And we will see it in the coming exercises, how exactly do we manage to do this. Another advantage is in the flow parameters. So a lot of times we think our process is linear. We have a start, middle, and an end for a project. But if something that life has taught us, that it's a never-ending process, it's never-ending fun, as I've stated here. A lot of time, we need to come back to older project and readjust something. If it's because we have received new data we need to incorporate, or we need to tweak something in our calculations. Or, as I said, the business requirement might change and we need to adapt to this change. And re-editing a finalized recipe or a finalized project might take considerably a lot of time, because even if you're the person who wrote this project, diving back and understanding what you have done can take a lot of time. And especially if you are a new user who got this project passed down from a different user, and you need to re-understand what that first author of this project have done. So I hope a lot of you guys are using comments in the recipe to help documentize what you're doing. But even with that, it takes a lot of time to understand what will happen and understand what exactly needs to be changed and to change it accordingly. This is why when we approach a new project and strategically place parameters in the recipe, we allow our project and our recipes to be much more flexible for those coming changes. And again, I believe that we will all see this in the coming exercises. So with all of that said, we got to the main event, the wrangling itself. So roll up your sleeves and get ready to wrangle. A few points though before we jump into it. First of all, our environment where we will do this training is the one mentioned here, the training Trifacta net. I will also copy paste it to our chat, so you will have it in a moment. No need to get there right away, right now. The location of the data that we will be using is in Redshift public, and the name of our dataset is Parameters Summit 2021. A lot of you might know this table. It's very familiar from our Wrangler, our certification, and it have 5 columns, and I will send you again the schema in the chat. So a few Wrangler's tip before we begin. Again, I will send everything in the chat, so there is no need to go right now to the environment. The first exercises will be in creating parameterized data sets. And as I said, we will use the SQL type from a table. And when we're creating parameterized data sets in SQL, I will advise you, first of all, to write the entirety of your logic in SQL. And that is because, first of all, it's easier to change, to copy, paste, move, rewrite until you're satisfied with the logic of this SQL query. Because parameters you can create, but you can't move or copy paste. So once you are sure you are happy with your query, then make sure that your query is validated. And afterwards, mark the values in SQL that are supposed to be the default values, and you will create from them the parameters. Let's see what I mean. Let's take this, for example, for a query that I would like to do a parameterized dataset from. So the first step is I will want to make sure that I'm happy with the logic I have created. Second step, I will make sure this query is validated. It's much harder to debug a query once it has parameters in it. So once I'm happy and the query is validated, make sure to mark your values and create from them a parameter. As you see, the moment I create a parameter from values I have marked, it becomes the default value. And then all you have to do is give a name to this parameter. I will advise you to come up with a template for naming your parameters so it will be clear and very indicative to what is the purpose of this specific parameter. My personal template that I have came up with is to first of all start up with, is it a dataset parameter or a flow parameter? If I have a group of parameters who have the same family of functions, then I will give it a group name and then the specific parameter name. And it depends on how elaborate this parameter is, I will give it parameters, what are the values that are allowed in this parameter. But of course, feel free to use whatever you're comfortable with and what is clear to you. You can adopt my template or parts of it, whatever you are comfortable with. So one thing before we get started, let me send to you all those information I have just talked about. So I'm sending it in the Zoom chat as well as I will try in the chat in the Wrangler Summit website itself. So I've sent you the link to the training environment, and I have sent you the table location and the table columns, the schema. I've also sent you my naming template that you are free to choose if you want to incorporate or not. And for all of you who might not be as much as familiar with SQL, I have the basic SQL query you are free to use. All right, so let's get to our training. And our first challenger gives us 5 different exercises. The first one is creating a data set where the product is only pants. Of course, pants will be a parameter that we can change in the future. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to test it for yourself, and we're going to do this together. So good luck, everybody, and I am taking 2 minutes now in the timer. Yeah, of course, guys, feel free to write in the chat. Okay, fellas, we have 1 minute to go, and we will do it together.
Build our, the end project.
Of course, if you have finished early, feel free to raise your hands to let me know. Alrighty, everyone. Let's do this together. First of all, we have a lot to cover today, and I know it's very intensive. So don't feel bad if you haven't finished some of the exercises. I know it can be a lot to take in. So just for your information, this presentation is going to be shared with you after the summit. As well, this session is being recorded, so you can come back and see everything if you have missed something. And of course, I will share my info in the end, so you can feel free to ask me any question you have. So with that said, let's see how we do this together. So as I said, the first step when we are creating a parameterized dataset is create the SQL query and make sure that we are happy with the logic. And as you can see here, we have the select all from our table where product is equal pants. Now, if you want to create a parameter out of it, then we just mark the pants and create a variable parameter out of it. And as you see, the pants becomes the default value, and all is left is for me to give the name of this parameter. And as you see here, I'm using my template, which is DP, a data set parameter, and the name of this parameter is product. So if you guys have done something similar to this, great job, everyone. But I would like to challenge you even further and ask you, is there a way to make it even more flexible? We are using parameters to bring more flexibility to our project. So when we're using parameter, we always want to keep asking ourselves, how can we make it more flexible and more reusable? So in this specific question, I have asked you to create a filter for a specific item, for a specific product, pants. But what if in future needs, we would like to filter a list of products, let's say pants and skirts, or jackets and dresses? It will be much more flexible if we have done where product in, and then we can use only pants if this is what we want, but it allows us to add more products for in this filter. So this is just an idea. How can we, create to bring more flexibility in our parameters? So great job, everyone. We have finished our first challenge, and we will move on to the second one. So in this challenge, we would like to create a data set with a parameter that we can set a number of weeks ago. So the parameter should allow me to set if I want the data to be from 1 week ago or 10 weeks ago. So again, I'm going to give a couple of minutes for you guys to test it on your own. And again, we will do it together in a few minutes. Of course, if you're finished, feel free to raise your hand and we will move along. So good luck, everyone. And our 2 minutes are starting now. And of course, any questions, I am now available in the chat. So if you have a question, I'm there. Okay, everyone, we have 1 minute to go, and we will do it together. All right, a few more seconds to go. So let's do this together.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Did the more flexible product list behave similar to a vector? Actually, I need to understand better what you mean by that. As I said before, in the question, I have asked to create a parameter for a specific item, but in our future runs, we don't know if the user would like to filter on more than one product. Maybe it's a couple or a few products. So just by creating it in and not in an equal sign, we're able to add more products to this filter. And this is how we bring more flexibility. I hope it answered your question, but if it hadn't, then feel free to rephrase it, and I will address to this when you will write it. So thank you for notifying me about that. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm happy to hear. So let's see how we do this exercise together. So the first option is creating our date column is bigger or equal to the current date. It can have different syntax depending on the environment you're working from, if it's sys date, today, or current date. And then minus the number of weeks in a digit multiplies by 7. So if I do 1 week ago, it will be 7 days ago from this current date. And if I, in the parameter, type 10, then it will be 70 days, which are 10 weeks from this current date. But just like last time, I will ask you, how can we create it? How can we bring more flexibility to it? Right? This is the question we're always going to keep on asking ourselves. So we can do it in a lot of different ways. And it's okay that in each project, we will choose how much flexibility do we want to bring to this query, to this data set. So I just want to challenge, the way we think. So first of all, who said I want always the date taken will be bigger than a specific range given? Maybe I would like the date taken to be smaller. So I can perhaps put the operation sign as a parameter, so the user can choose whatever he or she would like. Also, a lot of the times we would like the date to be relative for this date, for today, the current date. But perhaps sometimes we would like to work from a custom date. So creating a parameter for the date will allow us to put a sys date today, a current date that is relevant to right now when the job is running, or we can give a custom date. And lastly, also the quantity of how much time do we reduce from this date is also something that we can put in a parameter. As we have seen in the first option, we can have number of weeks by a number multiplies by 7, but we can also have 1 day or even 1 hour. So we don't always need to use all of those parameters. I just want to give more ideas to how can we add even more flexibility from the specific option or the specific question that I've given in the original question. Another option that I just want you to know of is using the dateAdd function, which is very similar to what we have done manually in option 2, but just in a function format. So it's not necessarily more efficient than option 2 for this specific use case, but I really advise you to look into it because it might be very effective to future exercises we're going to have. So let's move on to the third exercise, where we would like to create a data set where we set a range of dates. So the date that we are taking is bigger or equal to a specific start date and is equal or smaller than an end date given. We're going to give again 2 minutes for this, and we will come back and do this together. So good luck, everyone. I'm putting a timer for 2 minutes from now. And as again, I am available for questions in the chat. Derek, I see what you wrote me. I will give your question to Alvin from Trifacta that might be able to help you. So 1 moment, okay? Okay, so I hope Alvin will be able to help you, Derek. 1 minute to go, everyone, and then we will join back and do this together. Just a few more moments and we will do this together. As I stated before, it's okay if you haven't finished some of the exercises. I know it's a lot to take in because, as I said, we have a lot to cover in a very short period of time. So everything, the presentation, the recording of the session will be available for you afterwards, so no worries. Okay, so let's do this together. So actually, this challenge was very straightforward for all of you who know that between in SQL, where we do our date column between a start date and an end date. And as we have seen before, this date parameter can be used as a date relevant for now, for the time that the job is executed, from system to date, current date, depends on the syntax of the environment you're working with, or a custom date that we have created. As you can see here, the stages that I have advised you to work with as, first of all, creating the logic in SQL, making sure that this query is validated, and then change the default values into parameters as seen here. So this was very, straightforward, and I hope most of you had success with this exercise. Now, our second exercise is especially challenging, really challenging, and we will do it together. In this challenge, we would like to create an option to clear, to erase whatever filter we have done in our previous exercise. So in our previous exercise, we have created a parameter to filter dates between 2 dates. Here we want the option to disable this option. So when we want to filter, we will be able to do that. And when we don't want to filter, we will be able to do that as well. And for us to do so, we need to understand what comments are and how can we use them for our advantage. So comments is something that is in most computer languages, from SQL to coding languages. And this is a part of our code that we can write, we can read, we can see, but this part of the code does not get executed. And this is the reason we can use it to disable or enable parts of our code. We have two types of comments in SQL. We have one line or one row comments, as you've seen here, and we have comments that range between different or multi rows or lines. So let's first of all understand the logic of how we would like to build this data parameter. So we will have in the where section of our SQL the filtering logic we want to do. And we will put before and after our logic our disable parameter. Now, and after our disable parameter, we will create a comment that will, which will take the entire filtering of our where section. So let's see this more in action. We'll understand better how it works. If our parameter is set on the one-line comment, it will actually disable the multi-line or multi-row comment, which will in fact enable our filter in the where section. But if we will leave our parameter empty, or we will create a closed comment as seen here, we will leave the multi-row comment intact, which will create the fact that it will disable all our where logic, all our where filtering. So this is what we are going to try to do. And now that we understood that, let's see how do we do it in Trifacta. So we have here our query. And as you see here, we have the row comment following up the multi-row comment. We will mark our one row comment and create a parameter out of it. And as you see here, it's very important for me to give indicative names. So we see that it is a dataset parameter. The name is disable where. And as you can see here, I give specific comments to what value can I put here. So if it is default value, which is the one line comment, it will enable our where section. And if we will leave this parameter empty, it will disable it. Now, make sure that I have also created the same parameter in the end. And when I see this, it will act as the same parameter that just shows up multiple times in the query. Now, in my aQurate environment, it worked perfectly fine. But as I created those screenshots for this training, I saw that in Trifacta environment, it wasn't so happy. And this is because I have ended my query with a comment sign, as you can see. So if this is the case in your environment as well, a quick workaround, it just takes a few re-editing of the SQL query as so. So we will always end our query with a true statement. 1 = 1 is always true. And that means our query will always end with something that is not a comment. It will only need that our where will always show. And our filtering logic will end with an end. So if our where is not disabled, it will do where filtering and true statement. And if our where is getting disabled, it will be where true. So it will work either way. And as you can see here, our SQL query is validated. Our last challenge is actually our ultimate data parameter. And it's actually taking into account the last 3 challenges we have done to create this ultimate date parameter, which will give us the maximum flexibility in our projects. Now, because we're a little bit late in our timing, we will do this together as well. So the structure of this parameter will be very similar to what we have done last. We want to disable all the filtering so we can run an historical run on all the data we have with no filtering whatsoever. And this is the reason we have, like the last challenge, our disable parameter. Now, regarding creating our date filtering, we will use the between we have done in the last two challenges, as well as what we have done in the first challenge, where we create a date add function. So let's see how it works. We have our column date in the table between one date and another date. And the two dates are constructed with a date add functions, which is constructed by the time unit. Are we adding or subtracting a time quantity of days or month or hours and etc. from a specific date? It can be a date relevant from the time that the job is running, current date, this date, today, etc., or a custom date. Let's see some example to how it works. So let's say I want to get data from last month. So I will fill here date column between the first date add will be 1 month from today, and it will end from 0 days from today. And this is how I will get data from last month. Let's see if we want to take a data set from last week. So pretty similar to what we have done last time, we will take 7 days from today until 0 days from today, and we will get the delta we have from last week. If we want to take a specific month, for example, then we will take the first day of the month, let's say the 1st of December, and then like minus 0 days. So we're just taking the custom date we have given, and then 1 day subtracting from the first day of the next month. So that means that no matter how long the month is, if it's 28 days or 31 days, we will always get it right. And of course, we can take from random, like between a random set of dates, as seen here. Great job, everyone. We have finished our first set of the training, and we'll move on to our next stage, and we have a new challenger, and those exercises will be focused on the flow parameters. So the first challenge is when we want to add a parameterized percentage to a specific parameterized discount. So again, we're going to give a couple of minutes for you to try it on your own, and we will do this together. So good luck, everyone. And I am, of course, here in the chat for every question you have. Okay, a few moments, a few seconds to go, and we will do this together. Okay, everyone, let's do this together. So the first step that we will need to do is go to our flow and create new parameters in the Manage Parameters window that we can get in the flow or in the recipe, depends on your version. So as you can see here, I have created two types of parameters. As you can see, I have named them flow parameters, and the first one is discount add, and the second one is discount match. In the conditions, I have created if the discount is equal to the discount match parameter, then add to the discount add parameter as well. So in this case, as you have seen, the discount match was 0. That was most of the discounts that I have in this column. And I wanted to add to it 25%. And as you can see here in the preview, this is exactly what I wanted. Make sure that you give a default value to all the rows that are not matched in your first condition. In this case, I want to give the regular discount value, and I just named it a new discount column. So just because we are a little bit tight with timing, we will do together the rest of our exercises. So the next one up is filtering and keeping only row matching a specific percentage. In this case, I decided to use the same parameter I have created in my previous exercise. So I used the filter rows step, and again I create the logic that if my discount matches my discount match parameter, then keep rows, and else it will be deleted. So I hope for a lot of you it's a very straightforward question and a very straightforward answer. And of course, if you would like, you can rewatch this video, and this you can get this presentation afterwards. Our next exercise is actually to count how many rows are for a specific item. This specific item will also be parameterized. So let's see how we do this. First of all, again, we create our parameter. We name it product name, and we give the default value pants. Then you can see that, again, a lot of times in parameters, I use the conditions to allow this flexibility. So if a product equals my parameter, which is pants, as we can see here, I would like you to give this value, which is pants. Otherwise, give this default value of others. Once I have this column, I can use a different function like count and count on this new column I have created. So we will know how much pants there is, and all the others that are not interesting me for right now for this purpose, it will be in the other count. The great thing about parameters is that we can see how it changes our logic live. So if we go back to our Manage Parameters window and we change the value from pants to jacket, and we go back to the recipe, we see how the recipe changes from our parameter change. So it's a great tool, to a little bit test and see and debug and to get more feel for data. A little bit more of a challenging training based on the last one we have done is actually giving the user to decide what will happen. So we're not only using parameters for calculations or for filtering, but also as a menu, we are supplying the user to decide what will happen. So in this challenge, we will create a menu that the user will choose what kind of aggregation will happen. Will we do a minimum price or a maximum price for a product, and so on. So Again, of course, we will create a new parameter with an indicative name that is very clear what is happening in this parameter. In this case, we will choose what kind of aggregation will take place. One is to find the minimum, and two is to find the max of a specific calculation. And let's see how we do this. For a lot of you guys, it might be intuitive to go back to the conditions, because a lot of the things we have done was using the conditions to create our logic. The thing is, we can't do aggregations in the condition window, as you can see here in the error we received. And the way to be able to do this is by creating a new formula, using the new formula window and creating this logic ourselves. So for all of you who don't know nested functions, I warmly advise you to get more familiarized with it, because it gives us a lot of flexibility in our steps. So let's try to understand what is happening here. Let's take the left window, for example. So in the new formula, we have created, if our parameter equals 1, then do a minimum. Else, if the parameter is equal to, do a maximum. Else, give me an error. Let's say error in parameter input. The great advantage in doing this way is that in the new formula window, we have a sort by and a group by option. And this is why we can create a group by for those aggregations, for the min and the max. The only difference between those two windows is if I'm doing the min or max on an int value, on a number, or are we doing it on a date? And this, so in one case, I will do the minimum max function, and in the other one, I will use the min date, min max date functions. We will move on to our last challenge together. And this is creating, again, a menu for the user to determine if we want an aggregation to be on days or on month. We will use the condition window to create a new column, which we will call it the date column for aggregations. So if our parameter equals 1, we will get the full transaction date, which is days. If it will choose 2, we will create a new date format where it will only take the years and month. So we will only have the month of this date. Since we created a new column, this will be the column we will do aggregations on. So let's see here, for example, if our parameter will be 1, we see here that the aggregation done, let's see some price, have been done on specific dates. If the parameter will be 2, we will see that the sum will be done on month, as seen here. Okay, everyone, so we have finished all of our challenges, and I think you all deserve a very well done and a pat on the back. You have been awesome. Those have been like a lot of challenges in a very short time period, I know. And as I said, we have all the materials if you would like to go back and self-paced do them yourselves. But otherwise, you have done amazing work, and I really enjoyed being here with you. And let's summarize. So we have seen that parameter can be an amazing tool to bring flexibility to our project. We have seen the 3 types of parameters we have in Trifacta, which is dataset, which is in the import process, flow parameters, and output parameters. We have seen some basic example for using parameters in our project, from filtering our data before the ingestion, or using parameters in calculation or in aggregations, or even creating like a code menu for the user to decide what are the steps that will happen in the recipe. I really hope that this session gave you some ideas and sparked your imagination on how you can incorporate this great feature in your future projects. And I guess this is it. I have here my work email and my LinkedIn information. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me. and feel free to contact me in LinkedIn. And we have about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So if you have questions, I'm here for you, and I would love to answer everything. Thank you so much, Victor and Alvin. Thank you so much, Andrew. And Marcus, thank you so much. I really hope that it would be useful for your future projects. Thank you, CJ. Sankar, thank you. Claire, thank you so much. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to send me. I would love to help. I see we have here a question from Sankar. I hope I'm pronouncing the names correct. How would we implement dynamic date window? Example, first day to the 15th day of every month for the last year. That is a very interesting question. I will need a bit to think about it. I guess it's creating parameters in the date itself. So we will create a date template of the first, and then we will do, like the first, it depends on what date format are you using, but we will, the day part will be filled as the first of the month. And then in the month, we will create a parameter. So we can run it on every type of month we want. And I guess we can also do it on, we want it only on the last year, so we can set it on 2020. But regarding making it automatically run on all the month, it requires some kind of loop, which we don't have right now in Trifacta, unfortunately. Thank you, Derek. I hope you enjoyed this session too. Yeah, Sankar, so I will keep on thinking on this, and if I have a better, I will try to reach out to you. Hey, so it's okay if you joined late. Oh, I see that you are directly messaging me, so the others don't know the question. So someone asked if this is being recorded and if you can get this documentation. So first of all, this session is being recorded and it will be shared with you after the summit is over. So you are encouraged to go over the video on parts that you missed out or have questions about. And the presentation I used for this session is also something that I have shared with the Trifacta team, and they're supposed to share it with you guys. Actually, I think that it is already in the website of this session. You'll be able to see this link. Let me, one moment, see. In the session, we have support file, and this is the PDF of the presentation I was working with. So all the screenshots of the step-by-step of what we have done is there, and you are more than welcome to use. Yeah, so I see that CJ have sent you a link for the Google Drive where the full presentation is there. So you are free to check it out there and download it for your own personal use. And as I said before, you are more than free to contact me personally, and I would love to help you with any question you have. Thank you, Anna. As I said before, I really hope that it will be useful for you in the future. And thank you for being with me in this session. I really enjoyed having you guys.